Hello my lovelies, my name is Stephanie Lynnette and I may or may not contain trans fats. And welcome back, or welcome to, if you're new, my channel. So in today's video, as I'm kind of going through this step-by-step reintroduction to my channel, kind of coming back to YouTube, coming back to regular content creation, I wanted to create a video about why I am now using a different set of pronouns. So that's what we're going to be talking about today, why I went from she, her pronouns to she, they pronouns. Okay, so first things first, I cannot tell whether or not this dress is supposed to sit here or supposed to sit like Victorian off-the-shoulder garb, okay? I can't figure it out, haven't been able to figure it out, and this is fine. This is fine, this is what we're gonna do, because I have no idea how to style this dress. Not a clue, not a clue, not a sausage, don't know how to do it. Really sorry, used to be a fashion girl. Anyway, so in today's video, we are talking about my pronouns, specifically my pronouns, but also the journey that I kind of went on to change my pronouns. So for those of you who don't know me, for those of you who are new, for those of you who are not familiar with my content, I transitioned, so I actively began my transition the day before my 13th birthday. So my last day of being 12 years old. And on that last day of being 12 years old, I decided to use she, her pronouns. They were my chosen pronouns. They, them pronouns went as, I guess, colloquially used when I came out as a trans woman or a trans girl, because I was a teenager, in 2010, the day before my birthday in 2010, the day before I turned 13. And so I used she, her pronouns for the duration of my transition. So from the age of 13 through secondary school, which is what you call half of middle and most of high school in England, and then through to my college education, my university education, in my everyday life, in my job, and I felt very comfortable and very affirmed utilizing she, her pronouns. It felt very natural for me to use she, her pronouns. I still use she, her pronouns. You know, people often associate myself with she, her pronouns because of the way I look and the way I dress and the way I present and the way I fit into a certain category within society. But around 2022, when I was opening Queer Britain, I began to find myself much less tethered to the idea of quote unquote, you know, stereotypical femininity, a stereotypical woman. You know, I used to have very long hair, I used to be very, very thin, I used to be hyper feminine, I used to aspire to be a wife and aspire to be a mother, and I was kind of drifting away from this idea of the hyper feminine, but then I was also finding myself in more and more queer situations that I had never been a part of until I kind of joined Queer Britain. I opened the museum and things like that. And so for myself, it was this really unique time of kind of rediscovering who I was. And it was a journey that, you know, I say started at Queer Britain, but really started the day after I woke up from my lower surgery, when I suddenly realized that I didn't have to utilize the hyper feminine to feel feminine. So from there, I went on a couple of journeys of discovery. I went through, you know, discovering how I felt about my femininity. I went through and discovered and researched and found that I didn't necessarily associate with being biologically female. And a lot of trans women during their transition and post-transition do associate with being biologically female, mostly because if you're a transsexual and you've gone through a process of kind of changing your sexual characteristics, what actually happens to your genetic makeup much like it goes so far to resemble that of a biological woman that you're almost there. And in my opinion, although I will never be there, and although it's, you know, a bit of a thorn in my side, I would rather face that than try and make myself more comfortable with this idea of being a biological woman that I don't kind of adhere to. I also knew that I didn't fit within the category of non-binary, not because of my presentation, because you can be non-binary and femme-presenting, non-binary and masc-presenting, non-binary and kind of entirely androgynous, but for myself, I never associated with the title of non-binary because it was always so clear to me that I was going from man to woman. You know, I was transitioning my sex characteristics from male to what would closely kind of resemble female. And so for me, it was never a case of kind of that grey area, but I found a lot of joy in utilising they, them pronouns alongside she, her pronouns in terms of, I guess, navigating my way around queer spaces, navigating my queer identity, which I had suppressed for a really, really long time. I had, you know, gone through so much of my transition as Steph, so much of my transition with the goal of kind of living as Steph. And for myself, it was kind of this huge step for me to kind of move towards this idea that, you know, I'm no longer choosing to live stealth. I'm choosing a life within the queer arts. I'm choosing to be participating in charities. I'm choosing to be openly trans and visibly trans on YouTube. And for myself, it was kind of, I know it probably sounds really stupid, but it was a really long journey of self-discovery in terms of moving away from this idea of like she, her, hyperfemme, societal woman, which is very much what I was doing before I kind of started to navigate and reintroduce myself back into queer spaces following my lower surgery. So with that discovery happening for myself, it very much kind of segued into me utilising they, them pronouns alongside my she, her pronouns, you know, navigating spaces. But then also when I became, you know, a trustee of a charity, when I became the general events and projects manager for London Trans Pride, when I started going to speaking events, as a trans woman, I present as very stealth, I present as very passing. You know, I have always spoken about on my channel passing privilege and what that means. And I realized that I was going into these spaces and navigating these spaces, and obviously I am a white trans woman. I'm a very, very white trans woman. And I sound very posh, although I'm not. I had elocution lessons. I made a video on that like years ago. So if you want to go and look at that, then go and look at that. And for myself, I suddenly realized I was projecting, I was still projecting, and I think still to this day, I'm projecting that idea of kind of like classic privileged woman, you know, white, cis passing, sounds posh, educated, like all of those things. And so for myself, it kind of became this beacon to the people who I was coexisting alongside who didn't kind of benefit from those privileges that I'm very aware that I have, to let them know that I am a safe space and that I'm entirely comfortable with they, them pronouns. In fact, the only pronouns I'm not comfortable with are he, him pronouns, because I think I'm so far removed from that pronoun criteria that it just feels really kind of oddly baffling to me to be even in that umbrella, honestly. But yeah, so I made the decision in 2023 to start using she, they pronouns officially, like in an official capacity in my everyday life, in my email signature, on my Instagram, in like everything, like, you know, documents, things like that, whatever. And whenever it was, you know, prefer to self-describe your pronouns, she, they, and all of those things. And I utilised it not only to make sense of my, you know, queer identity and to make sense of my identity as a trans woman existing outside of that as, you know, biologically female, but still within the very much societal construct of womanhood, you know, that I wanted to find some kind of semblance of identity that didn't feel like I was performing my gender. And for me, she, they pronouns really did that, you know. And I think I'm not at all offended when people continue to utilize she, her pronouns for me. I think it's a very easy thing for people to do. I think it's you know, kind of a lazy thing to do. But I also love utilising they, them pronouns because it means that I not only communicate a level of understanding to other queer people that they might not know just kind of talking to me colloquially if they were unaware of my transition and unaware of that journey, but also because it really does tether me to this idea of my gender identity not existing within the two binaries. You know, I'm not non-binary, I'm closer to one than I am the other, but I don't exist within those biological categories in the way that people would expect. I will never not be biologically male. That will be my genetic makeup. I was always going to have been born biologically male, but I fit so much more within the constructs and within the society kind of basis of womanhood and female nature and things like that. And so, yeah, it was just a way for me to kind of integrate into the community, to find a sense of identity, to communicate myself as a safe space for other queer people and other non-binary people, gender expansive individuals, other trans people, to have conversations about their queerness and have there be absolutely no shame associated with that in conversation with me. And that's kind of the journey that I took. I've been using the pronouns full-time for 2 years now, and I love them, honestly. I really, really do. And so I guess the point of this video was to, you know, I've been talking a lot about reintroduction to myself and who I am, and so my name is Stephanie Lynnette. I use she, they pronouns, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Don't forget to give me a like and give me a subscribe. You know, if you feel like it, there's no pressure, obviously. You can also come and follow me on Instagram, but again, there's no pressure, obviously. And that's my journey of how I came to change my pronouns, how I found comfort within she, they pronouns, and how I utilize them in my everyday as a trans woman of queer identity. So I hope that this very odd, probably incredibly babbly video was entertaining at the very least, because I don't think it was informative. But I just wanted to kind of talk about the fact that that has changed in the last couple of years of my life since I've last been on YouTube, and it's part of who I am now, part of my queer identity, and I love using them. And you as a queer person, you can change your pronouns whenever you like, but it can be a very transformative experience. You know, when you suddenly feel comfortable within a set of pronouns that you're no longer holding yourself to unrealistic standards, it can be a very emotional, transformative experience. So I hope that this video has maybe helped some people to kind of navigate that. I hope it's gotten rid of some of the imposter syndrome for some people who will feel like they're not entitled to use they, them pronouns outside of the idea of being non-binary. And I will see you next week for another video, and I hope you're having a lovely day, and I hope you're avoiding transphobia, because that's very, very difficult to do right now. And like I said, I will see you next week for another video.